Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst. I'm super excited because this is episode 70, which I think in itself is a milestone, so very excited. I've interviewed so many amazing entrepreneurs and shared so many solo episodes about podcasting, so if this is one of the first episodes that you found, definitely I would love it if you could go back and listen to some other ones that may interest you. Today I am talking with Amanda Balcombe, a health and mental fitness coach. We talk about how she healed from burnout, how she navigated through a cancer diagnosis, and the connection between mental and physical health, and also she shares some tips on avoiding burnout and how she takes a coach approach to mental health. So a little bit about her. As an award-winning financial advisor, she enjoyed her career, but realized she needed to make some serious changes in her life when burnout crept up on her, along with a cancer diagnosis. She was living in a beautiful country town with a loving family, but she had become stressed and out of balance and really unwell. And as someone who has lived with an autoimmune condition since she was a teenager, she knew what it was like to bring her body into alignment and stand in her best health through lifestyle medicine. So she says that experiencing burnout was the reminder that she needed, which I think is a very unique perspective on burnout. A lot of people think of it as such a bad thing, and it is. We get into it in this episode about, the repercussions of burnout and what it really, really is. But she says it's the reminder that she needed to become aligned again and really support her vision of her future. And so through doing this on herself, healing, recovering, she realized she could support other high-achieving women to do the same. So that's what this episode is all about. I think that this has really good tips for not only if you're on the path to burnout or experiencing burnout currently, but it has really great mental health tips just for managing stress and really navigating through the busy times of business. So this episode really has a lot for everyone. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Hey, Amanda, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm so happy that you're here with me today.
Hi, Haley. I'm so excited to be here today. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we were connected through a mutual connection. Haley Rowe, she was actually on my podcast a little bit ago. And so very thankful that she connected us. And when I was doing some research about who you are, what you do, what your business is all about, I was really intrigued about not only the mental health side of things, but specifically burnout. I just did a solo episode about how to not get burnt out through the summer because personally for me, I'm traveling a lot, going on vacation. Keeping up with business can sometimes be a lot, but you're going into winter, right, in Australia, so
Yep.
kind of on the other side of things. But today we're going to talk all about burnout and mental health. So really excited about that.
Me too.
Do you want to start off by telling us more about who you are and your story?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my background, I live in a country town in Australia, and my background is actually financial planning. So I was doing that for 17 years, and I really loved my career. I loved looking after people. And in 2021, there had been changes in our workplace that kind of led me down the path of burnout. But on reflection, I can see that it was not just changes in the organization, but I was out of alignment with the changes the organization made and how they were servicing clients. And also, I was an overachiever. So they were things that I wasn't really aware of, but that always made me keep pushing through to keep achieving more. And on the same token, I realized that I was a people pleaser as well. So I was worried about my clients. I was putting them first, putting my family first. And as these 3 months rolled on, I ended up burning out and having to leave my job, which was really quite scary at the time. But I remember that I was feeling really unwell. I was quite sick, and often I'd be bursting into tears before I was going to work. And then one morning I sort of said to my husband, I just can't do this anymore. I was just so unwell. So I ended up leaving my job and took some time out. And when I was doing this, I really thought about what I wanted to do next. And I'd been really interested in health for a really long time because at a young age, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I'd become more and more interested in people's well-being as I could see the world changing. We'd had the pandemic and people were struggling a lot with work-life balance and with their mental health. So I decided that I really wanted to go down that path. And do I want to stay financial planning for the next 15 years, or do I want to retrain and become a health and mental fitness coach? So that's what I ended up doing. And as I was making that decision, taking some time out to heal, I actually ended up getting a cancer diagnosis. And that kind of really gave me a big wake-up call around, okay, what's really important to me? You know, you get really clear really fast what matters in life. And for me, I decided that I wanted to, I guess, be in control of my own destiny and to really follow my passion of health and helping people be happier and healthier in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sorry to hear about that cancer diagnosis. And do you think that kind of the burnout fed into that, or kind of what is the, maybe do you see a connection there? I feel like there a lot of people don't talk about the connection between like mental health and your actual physical health. So, do you
Absolutely.
have any advice on that?
Yeah, I think with the burnout, I really was burnt out. I'd hit that place where I was really unwell. I had physical, mental, and emotional and cognitive symptoms of burnout. And when you continue to keep pushing through and have that prolonged stress for a long period of time, it can really lead to, I guess, worse diagnosis or a more sinister diagnosis. And whether that was connected or not, we'll never know. But it just seems that, you know, the fact that that was happening as I was burning out. And we do know, like the research shows that stress can lead to cancer diagnosis or, you know, quite bad outcomes with health. So I guess I wouldn't be pushing it. With that chronic stress, it can lead to a cancer diagnosis. So
Yeah.
I do think there was a connection. I was relatively healthy. I was always active. I ate well, but that chronic stress can really catch up with our body.
Yeah, yeah, I totally. And thank you for, sharing your personal experience. I'm also curious. I have personally never experienced like extreme burnout, but that is something that I hear a lot in the corporate world and even when entrepreneurs push themselves too much, right? Like it happens. So, as a burnout
Yes.
expert, like what is the difference between just being like stressed and actually like burnt out?
Yes. So that's a really great question. With stress, we can have good and bad stress. So stress, you know, helps us get out of bed in the morning. It helps us perform. It helps us grow. So we do need stress in our life. Stress is usually short term. It comes and it goes, but burnout builds over a longer period of time. And it's after an exposure to prolonged or chronic stress. So in that case, I had had that chronic stress and it had been for a prolonged period of time. And to hit that full burnout, you generally can get a range of symptoms. And as I mentioned before, it can be physical. So, for me, it showed up as headaches, feeling sick in the stomach, sleep disturbances. I was emotional. I was teary. I had my hormones were a little bit out of whack. I had trouble making decisions. I had that dread of not wanting to go to work. And I'd never felt like that. Like that was really out of character because I loved my work. So yes, it can show up in different ways and it's different for everyone how it shows up.
Totally. That is a good distinction to know, like the difference of just being stressed for a day or like things are actually going down the wrong path, right? Like you need to make a change before anything becomes crucial. I would love to hear maybe some tips you have for anyone who is kind of like going down the burnout path right now, or maybe already burnt out. Like, if someone comes to you and they're in this place, what do
Mhm.
you recommend that they do?
Yes. So if they have hit extreme burnout, they really do need to take some time out from work and really just rest and stop. And for me, I realized that getting still helps your nervous system start to downregulate, so start to recover. Because we live in this world where we just go, go, go. And especially for entrepreneurs, often you're a solo entrepreneur, you've got to wear many hats. And we're often really passionate about what we do. So, we can just keep going and not stop or go down a rabbit hole and 10 hours later you're still working. And I think the other important thing to know is with the world, it's 24/7 culture. So, people can get access to you all the time with devices, phones, laptops, and we need to, start to take time away where we unplug. So some of the things that I talk to my clients about are first pressing pause, slowing down, and taking that time to get still. So that might be breath work, or it might be incorporating mindfulness into their day. So really noticing what's around them with their five senses and really becoming present in the moment. So that's some of the first things that I talk to them about. Then I go on to taking some time out to unplug. So maybe first thing in the morning, not touching our phones for the first hour and doing some things that really help set you up for the day. That might be moving your body, that might be meditation, it might be connecting with your partner, but things that are really important to you and give you some time away from devices. It could be at night when you're having dinner with your family, instead of making sure, you have phone free time at the dinner table so that you can really connect. So finding those places in your day where you can unplug, and that also helps your mental resources recover as well, because they become drained over the day. And I think another big thing is setting boundaries. So making sure that we're able to say no to things. So with burnout, some of the behaviors that are more prone to burnout are perfectionists, overachievers, and people pleasers. So that inability to say no. So I think setting some boundaries around, when work starts, when it finishes, when life starts is really important. And sometimes we need to maybe take a step back before we, to see whether we have capacity to do that thing or task that somebody's asking us to do, rather than just automatically just saying yes. So setting those healthy boundaries is really important.
That is definitely challenging for a lot of people, me included.
Yes.
I say yes to almost everything in my personal life and business, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to take a step back. But those are great, great tips. And I'm also curious, I have a lot of friends who are in the financial industry, and everything they do, I've noticed, compared to like my friends who are in different industries, it's like so super calculated, right? Like
Yeah.
money, like think about money. And so I'm curious about like your personal experience of choosing to like having to quit your job, right? When I know you mentioned, you have your husband, but kind of like what advice do you have for anyone who's super calculated like that and is like needs to change what they're doing?
Yes, that's really interesting that you say that, because a lot of financial, I guess, workers, their brain is geared that way. And for me, it was a really hard decision to walk away. I didn't even take my sick leave, which wasn't the best financial decision, but I just felt so unwell that I had to get out of this. I think that's a big decision. And hopefully you don't get to that point where you're so unwell that you have to walk away. I think it's starting to recognize those signs where, maybe you're not sleeping well, or you're really exhausted and that's out of character, or you're feeling a little bit emotional, or your memory's not as good as it was, starting to recognize those signs and to maybe realize that, oh, I need to take a little bit of a break, use your holidays, or if you have to use some sick pay before you go making, drastic decisions like I did. I'm not saying that's the best thing to do, but at the time I just felt that's what I needed to do. I didn't know I was going to leave the industry altogether, but I think, really starting to recognize that maybe there's some signs coming. But the problem with burnout is it kind of creeps up on you and you sort of are well into it before you can recognize the signs. And I think maybe if you too understand your type of behavior or personality traits, like the perfectionism or the overachiever, or that inability to say no, they could be, little warning signs that maybe you could be more prone to burnout and start to head down that path.
Do you want to start growing your business rapidly in a really fun way? Do you want to increase your visibility and profits? I have just the thing for you. My course, Great Guesting: How to Grow Your Business Through Being a Podcast Guest, is now available, and it's guaranteed to get you on podcasts. Do you want to connect with more clients, share your story, make stronger connections, and grow your audience? But do you find that you're second guessing yourself, are indecisive on a topic because you're into so many things, and thinking, is this even possible? You'll love this step-by-step guide on how to be a podcast guest. We go over 6 lessons that are knowing your story, narrowing down the topic, finding podcasts to be on, setting up your audio, preparing to record, and of course, marketing, because that's what I'm all about. Being a guest can be fun, but if you don't have a plan to go with it, you're really just spending the hour talking. You're not moving your business forward, and that's exactly what this course is designed to teach you. You can find this course on my website at Espresso Podcast Production, and I guarantee you that you will be a guest on podcasts in no time. One thing that you talked about earlier too was breath work and these different types of tools that you recommend that you can do to maybe relax yourself or really look inward, because it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about, you kind of have to like step out of your body and be like, oh my gosh. For me, whenever I'm stressed out, I'm like, girl, why are you doing this to yourself? And so kind of like, what other tools do you recommend?
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. I think when I slowed down, what I realized, because we often are living in this, go, 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 busy, 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 don't stop, don't turn off, that we become disconnected to what really matters to us. And it wasn't until I was forced to stop that I did look inward, and I had to really reevaluate how I was living my life and what really mattered to me. So coming back to my values, and that's something that I work with my clients around, what really matters to you, what's really important to you, and coming back to their core values, because once you know that and you become connected to them again, you can make different decisions. But those tools around the breath work, the mindfulness, the meditation are really important to stop and slow down and to really start to, calm that stress cycle and calm the nervous system, which is, what a lot of our problems are. We live a lot of our life on that fight flight mode, the stress mode, where we are in that chronic stress, where we don't have that recovery time, where with a normal stress cycle, you go through, it's short term, it comes and it goes, and then your recovery comes in. But when you've got that prolonged stress, we don't often have that recovery time. So also building in little time out. So it might be just that 5 minutes of breath work, but then it could be, a weekend away or a week's holiday here. So making sure we build in those recovery times and those time out. I think making sure that, looking after our energy, and that starts with sleep, starts with moving our body, nutrition. So those are 3 fundamental pillars of well-being. So really looking at those things, making sure we've got good support, so surrounding ourselves with good people, that we can talk to when we are starting to maybe feel a bit stressed or a bit emotional, or we're not feeling good within ourselves. So, we mightn't have a mental illness, but we know that our mental well-being's not as good as it should be. So I think having a really good support network is really important as well.
Yeah, those are great advice. I'm also curious about who you work with specifically. I know your Instagram said women over 40. I'm also curious, like, at what point do they come to you? Is it when they're burnt out or on the way to burnout? Is there kind of like a shame that they have when they come to you? Like, that they feel like they can't handle everything and they like, I don't know. I'm curious to learn more about, their mental well-being when they come to you for help.
That is such a great question. And essentially, I work with myself. That was 2 years ago. So, yes, mainly women in midlife that are struggling with work-life balance, that are really stressed and burnt out and just not feeling great about themselves. So when they come to me, they've recognized that things are out of balance in their life and they want to make changes, but they're just not sure where to start. And I don't think a lot of them fully realize that they are heading towards burnout, or they are burnt out. So when we go through, what's going on for them, they then start to realize, what symptoms they have and how burnout, or how they're heading towards burnout and stress, is showing up for them. But there is that sense of, I should be able to handle this. What's wrong with me? Everybody else is doing it, but I'm not. And I know I felt exactly that. I was like, God, what's wrong with me? I'm a real coper. I just get on with things. And I remember that sense myself. And I see that showing up for my clients. They're thinking, with social media, it's easy to think that everybody's handling life well, or that they're juggling it all and they're not feeling stressed. But that's not the case. Like, there's so much tied up in that. We do have this 24/7 culture. We're juggling work and we're juggling family. I guess there's those pressures that we need to be doing it all and having it all. And that sometimes that may not be healthy. And we need to look at ways that we can make changes, that we are prioritizing our health and well-being. And as women, we generally don't. We don't give ourselves that permission. We put everybody else first. So I see that showing up, and I see that sense of shame that, I should be able to handle all of this and I'm not. But what I'm loving is that they're coming to me. They're reaching out and they're getting the support that they need, and that they're not broken, that they can find more balance in their life. And it's really about connecting back to their values and working out what matters. And then they can take those steps forward.
Totally, totally. I'm also curious, when it comes to them reaching out to you, are they also looking for help with, like wellness and fitness? Because you kind of focus on like the whole health aspect as well. How do you work with your clients?
Yes. So I guess it varies. What I'm seeing mostly is people that maybe they get to their 40s and they're like, I'm just not feeling great. I've lost my spark for life. I want to know what else is out there for me. Maybe I'm feeling a little overweight. I'm feeling tired. I don't have a lot of energy. Energy is a big word. And then there's the stress part of it, the work-life balance. That's probably the main thing that I work with my clients, is managing the stress levels, the burnout, and then the mental well-being. So as a mental fitness coach, it's a fairly new concept, but it's taking a coach approach to mental health. And it's probably filling that gap where not everyone needs a psychologist, but people need support in how they can manage their stress levels and burnout. So it's filling that gap earlier on, so more preventative, which is great. So yes, people can come to me for different, I guess, reasons with their health, but a lot of it comes back to mindset and behavioral traits, and then making those little steps forward to make their life happier and healthier. So working on the mental health as well as their physical health.
Yeah. Do you think people know that they're going down a path to burnout? Or do you think maybe they're like, oh, I have all these other keywords that you just said that are happening to me. Let me find someone who can like help me with these. And then they're like, oh shoot, I am getting burnt out.
Yeah. I think that that's exactly right. They're sort of starting to go, I'm not feeling great.
Mhm.
Like, or they're having little moments that they're sort of going, oh my God, like I'm not in a good place. I need to make a change. I think there is some different things that hit them, even though little things have been niggling at them and sort of showing up. They've probably just been ignoring them, but then something bigger happens where they sort of out of character, either, I don't know, have a bit of a meltdown or realize that they're just not coping. And that sort of makes them understand that I need to do something. Sometimes people might have some depression and anxiety and they're thinking that's what it is, but there is an element that feeds into burnout. So
Mm.
sometimes it is actually the burnout, but some of the symptoms showing up may be that anxiety or mild to moderate depression. So there is that confusion sometimes where people may just think that's what it is, but there is underlying burnout is a part of it. And it's still fairly new. It's not a medical diagnosis yet, but there are more studies coming out around what those symptoms look like.
Yeah, well, that's great that you're out here educating people on that and kind of helping them find clarity when they do have the confidence to reach out to you.
Yeah. And I really love it because I think people are still learning about burnout. They're not educated and they don't really know what the difference is between stress and burnout and what those symptoms look like. So I'm really passionate about getting out there and letting people understand what burnout is so that they can hopefully prevent it and not, hit that extreme burnout like I did and then have maybe not a great diagnosis after.
Yeah, because I hear people talk about burnout now, but I think the first time I ever really understood what burnout was when it was actually someone that I knew through my business. She got burnt out and had to take time off. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I understand it now. Like it's a real
Yeah.
thing. People deal with this. And so it is kind of sad that the way that we educate ourselves on it is through other people experiencing it. But it
Yeah.
is on the other side of that positive because people are now being more open about it and willing to talk about it. And then, there's coaches like you who can help them before this even happens.
And I think that's really important is that me sharing my story helps other people or gives them permission to actually go, actually, I'm not coping. I need some support and tools to get out of my burnout or to manage my stress levels or to improve my mental well-being. So it is really important that we're talking about. And there is so many studies or surveys coming out showing that half the workforce is almost feeling, burnt out or heading towards burnout. So a lot of people are feeling it, but I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Yeah, I've had some bosses in the past where at that moment I was like, what is wrong with them? Like, why are they like this? But now looking back at it, I'm like, they were probably just experiencing like burnout, but not handling it well. So
And not
puts a lot of things.
understanding.
Yeah, puts a lot of things in perspective because especially in the corporate world, like as you experienced, it can be scary to leave your job that's giving you all the money that you earn, right? So,
Absolutely. And that was a big thing because I was in a good job, earning a good income and contributing towards, my family and supporting them. So I felt quite guilty actually leaving and having time out for myself and retraining. And my husband didn't make me feel that, but I've always contributed and that was a hard thing for me to do, but I knew my body needed that time to heal because I was not well. And I'm really glad that I did take that time out to decide that actually I don't want to go back to living that way, where you're working long hours, that overachieving. I had to really realize that while achievement is important to me, I'm not my achievements, that I'm actually good enough who I am. So it was a big learning curve about myself, that whole experience of burnout. But to your point before, I remember telling my boss, and he was a lovely boss, and we'd just come out of the pandemic. And I remember saying, look, I'm really burnt out. And he said, oh, I didn't even know what burnout was until yesterday, like the day before, they'd had a psychologist come in and talk to all the leaders about burnout. And I was sort of quite surprised, thinking, we've just had the pandemic. Doesn't everyone know about burnout?
Right.
But then I was reading about well-being and things like that. That was what I was interested in. And I just realized that not everybody is interested in this or even knows about it. So it kind of made me realize how a lot of people really don't understand what burnout is.
Yeah, very powerful. And you said this happened 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, in 2021.
So now you have your own business, right? Like,
Yes.
when did you start? It's called Still Wellness, correct?
Yes.
When
So
did
I
you
started my business last year in December.
Okay, awesome. So one of the last questions I have for you is kind of, what did the process to like healing from your burnout look like? I know you said you took a lot of time off. I know that you had to deal with your health conditions. You mentioned before the interview that you had a surgery for your cancer, things like that. But what did the healing time and process look like?
Yeah. Look, I really took the 12 months off after I burnt out. And I realized I actually needed that time. I I had to, firstly, I remember just sitting on my front veranda for the first week, sitting in the sun, drinking cups of tea, just stopping. I was so exhausted that I couldn't do anything. So what I did is I built in a daily meditation practice, which I continue to this day, and that's been super helpful. I give myself permission to slow down when I need to, but go fast when I need to as well. So just recognizing that sometimes we need to slow down and recover. I build mindfulness into my day. So when I'm going on my daily walk or when I'm swimming, just really taking in my surroundings and trying to be present. And with that, mindfulness helps reduce stress, improves your focus. So things like that. I take time out to unplug. I really look after my energy. So I go to bed early. I make sure I get my sleep. I move my body every day and I fuel myself with really good fuel. And I guess one of the other things is I practice gratitude and celebrate the wins. So that's something I did do in the last 12 months, is really focus on, what I'm grateful for, what went well, and then making sure, I'm surrounding myself with great people. I love talking and conversations. So making sure that I spend time with people that I love and having that time with them to, I guess, really recharge my batteries. So, and the other part was learning. I really loved retraining. I'm a lifelong learner. I love reading and I love learning new things. So I think that was actually really healing to be doing that during my recovery time.
Yeah, well, from an outside perspective, you really seem like you're on the right path. Like, the energy that you're giving off today is just incredible. And everything that you've shared today has been so actionable. And so, like, I've been loving this conversation so far.
Oh, thank you, Haley.
Yeah. I ask every guest this to start wrapping up the episodes, but I'm super curious as to what you're going to share. I'd love it if you could share 3 action steps that the audience can start with today to, move forward in their business or their wellness journey or whatever you want to challenge them with. I would love to hear what those 3 steps are.
Ooh, okay. So 3 steps for the wellness journey. So I think the first one is to maybe recognize when you're feeling stressed. So really get to know the signals that when you've moved from that good stress to that chronic stress. So it might be that your sleep is disturbed or you start to reach for sugary food because you're feeling stressed, or you start to get irritable. So really understanding what are your stress signals, and that can then start to help you notice quicker when you're heading down that path and to make some changes. So I think that's one of the first things, because a lot of people don't recognize what they're, probably ask their family, because they'll know what their symptoms are when they start to get stressed. So that's number one. Number two is starting to slow down. I think that's one of the biggest things that we don't do in life, because our life is so fast paced. So start to slow down. And that can look like just noticing your breath for a minute, or taking in your surroundings when you're out walking. So just really noticing where you are, slowing down and taking that in. And that starts to help that your nervous system recover from stress. And the third one, I think, is making sure you have a great support network around you. So if you have that support network, you can rely on them when you maybe aren't feeling great about yourself. You can also rely on them to re-energize you. So, hanging out with your friends or family and doing fun activities can really energize you. So maybe thinking about who you're surrounding yourself with, making sure you've got a good support network, and adding in some fun activity that energizes you.
I love those. Those are great steps. Where can people find you? And maybe if they want to work with you, how can they connect with you?
Yes, so my website is probably the first thing. So that's stillwellness.au. And you can have a look on the website, book a free consultation if you'd like to know more. Tell me what your challenges are, and I can give you some next steps. So my website's the first place, but I'm also on LinkedIn at Amanda Balcombe, and on Instagram at stillwellness_Amanda Balcombe if they want to connect. So please reach out. I'd love to chat to you.
Awesome. I will put all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much again for joining me. You've shared so many amazing tips today, and I've just really learned a lot from you. And I know this conversation will be helping lots of people.
Oh, fantastic. I've loved being here, Hayley, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.